Hi, welcome back to NowTV Canada. Here's the third segment for October 5th, 2014. I'm on my little computer, and the sound is probably sounding like I'm far away, but hopefully when it's loaded, it'll sound much closer. So, wait, I'm going to try and mess with the volume a little bit here. So bear with me. I don't like Windows 8. I don't like touch screens. Well, maybe on the bigger ones that'd be okay, but on this little thing, it's not so great. So now I can't even see the volume button. This is too funny. Okay, 52 seconds. I've wasted enough time. This is the letter. We're going to get this right. July 7th, 2014. The famous letter. I actually wrote in this, you'll see as I read it, that I said if he gets it and reads it, to not frame it because of how famous I'm assuming this letter will become between Richard Donner and myself and anybody else that's about to read it or hear it being read. Do a little segment like the James Franco world of videos, and we just call it the letter, and just use some of the live video feed I have for that. But here it goes. My dearest Richard, as you well know, I wrote on a couple of those envelopes that I was going to attempt going to the banks to see if I could render the results of landing enough money to begin registering and licensing my production company and have enough money to be the newest, biggest budgeted film in Canada. I understand you are upset. Who wouldn't be under the circumstances? Knowing we could have released You've Got Mail 2 at the same time as this most recent X-Men movie, along with all the other top movies that were released already and the ones to come. I too have found myself to feel very frustrated and disappointed in knowing we will not get to see how long You've Got Mail 2 could have stayed running in the theaters over this summer. This includes the drive-ins. Because it's a summer movie, I imagine with the quality and standard that my work's result compared to the first one would likely have meant the movie would have had lasting power to remain in the theaters most of the summer, no matter what the other summer releases were, rendering it with a large profit, meaning the movie would have made a lot of money this year, holding its own at the box office. I've honestly not been able to think about much else and how upsetting that is for me. I have had to continue to live in poverty and remain unknown and unspoken or written about, on top of losing that fantastic longest running movie in the theater for the summer experience. I highly doubt that any year from here in which we finally release the movie in will ever lend us the name of such big movie releases and as Godzilla and X-Men or Transformers. This is the problem with having secretaries, because it's a guessing game, a gamble on whether one has hired the right one to know something when something comes in the mail is of absolute importance and urgent matter that all the rules subsequent to the industry are immediately forthwith based on the evidence at hand. Those kind of mistakes can cost a company because of what it loses when that mail is chucked or returned to sender, while the information is never received by the owner. Who am I to say when someone should be let go because these people working in parts of the industry beneath our stature in the industry doesn't know when to understand it's time to bend or outright break the rules in order to get the right results on time? Which, had you received all the information last year, the rules in order to get the right results, resulting exactly in the right outcome, would not have applied. Any good writer that knows how to find the producers and the contact information that the middleman, the agencies, have doesn't need the middleman. And secretaries, they need to know this. Staff need to know this. Anyway, now we're going to lose yet another summer to get shooting underway to show how much can go wrong when someone doesn't get important mail on time. I wanted to share my brain with you a little so you can understand my position intellectually in this industry and why I'm so frustrated. When you are the best to know the most and see an industry around you that has adapted rules in a system that is archaic and outdated, or render someone as talented and intelligent as me stranded because of none of it being useful to me. I'm not here to come down to an agent's level. I'm not here to insult myself or my work. I'm not here to be told by someone who could never make it as an actress or producer or director or writer themselves in this industry to try and tell me how much money they want to keep their lifestyle and standard of living afloat so that you could finally receive a formal submission of the script that I have spent most of my life with little to nothing to get good enough to be the one to write. It makes no sense for me to pay someone to put their name or letterhead along with a paragraph atop my manuscript to you to read. If, as the writer, I already know how to reach you, that would be pointless. It just costs me money paying them. Well, why? I don't have to give them any loyalty. I'm the boss. They work for us. Because you and I both know that is all an agent primarily is. That is all they pretty much have to offer. They know the addresses and the contact information to the people and places that can get good working movies in the right direction faster. But there is an order to that system that doesn't work. It isn't taking care of the talent and isn't making people better at what they do, giving them more success and more control over the projects they have to do. You know the saying, stupid is as stupid does? Well, those are the kind of movies you're going to get with the kind of actors to suit if the whole industry is left up to agents to decide everything. Because agents just want to make a living and feel like they are good at doing something, even if it means telling an actor that they aren't worth much, or simply use the line, it's a job. On them, to get them to do parts this actor never imagined when they got into the industry would be something they would have to ever contemplate doing. Example, Adam Sandler movies, Jim Carrey movies, mistakes James Marsden's made, the once known Dawson from Dawson's Creek, James Vanderbeek. His movie industry work is just vanished, void, because he didn't have the right people backing their work to make them the best, the lead, important material. So they get stuck in a rut and a cycle. If you want to work, then this is all you can do. That isn't what they imagined they were going to do when they got into this industry. It's not what they were looking to get out of their life and their career. Now, if they were to try to set it up for themselves, they'd be afraid that they'd get blacklisted. No agency would work with them or do anything for them. Then they wouldn't have work. But when you're that famous, you can do whatever you want. But they have to know that themselves too. On with the letter. Now, the best ones like myself don't cave under pressure. We don't allow the middlemen of the industry to hurt us or our standards. They work for us. If I want to give somebody some money because I'm a nice person, because I see they need their bills paid for another year, that's up to me to decide. And that's what the agents need to understand and learn to accept and respect. Because if they understand that, then the good ones will work harder to find better projects and more important work, more suitable to their client, employer. If an agent is in control of the actor, then the actor and the actor's career is screwed. It will become middle of the road and damn near impossible for it to bloom into superstardom, because the agent is just an agent at the end of every day, and time will never make that agent a superstar. It's up to the actor to bother the agent 101 times a day. It's up to the superstar. The actor to have a good enough relationship with their agent to be able to call the agent 101 times a day. Why? Because that is the most important actor on their list, the one with the talent to pay the agent the most. If the agent works as hard as the actor to find the right movie role, etc., etc., etc. But when you are a writer, it's even more different than for someone who is just an actor. Writers are freelance. They can go with the flow. The great ones can do whatever they want, and the good ones will find steady jobs, and the shitty ones will wind up agents and on the unsolicited mailing list again and again and again. But the great ones can do whatever they want, which means mailing out their work unsolicited, because there are only two kinds of writers in the unsolicited pile, the great ones and the shitty ones. This is why you always have someone on staff going through the unsolicited pile, because it is the only place where you're going to find the writers good enough that don't need agents. Do what makes the shitty ones, the great ones hire after they become an overnight success, because they understand where they're coming from and how hard it is and how stubborn they are by staying in that unsolicited pile. And somewhere in there is probably a shitty writer that's not so shitty, but they need somebody to believe in them, back them up, help them, direct them, educate them. So even the shitty writers are good because most writers are good at what they do or they wouldn't be writers. So you got the great ones, the medium ones, and the shitty ones, and they're all really good writers. That's why they're sending stuff to you to read, no matter what pile it's in. Their perseverance, the shitty writer's desire, their passion, and their intent to be somebody, to be someone successful, to understand that the great ones don't need agents because the great ones can write no matter what stack of mail their work is or has been categorized in. This means that I would hire and take some of those writers onto my staff and under my wings and teach and work with them to make them better than all the writers with stable jobs because they have agents or publicists. And I don't want to have to be associated to those kind too much because the shitty ones want to be more successful than the ones that like the dependency of regular paychecks. The key to finding the shitty writers that can be better than the ones that write well enough to remain employed for 20 or 30 years, a steady job, writing jobs, is having a great one on staff in an agency who understands how to read what's being put on the desk in front of them. Key word, read. I sent this envelope out twice so that it would get read because it's a letter. And in order to know what to do, you have to read what you get to know what it is, to decide what to do. Key word, read. Now I'm reading it to share with people so they can decide for themselves and judge on their own what is right or wrong about the situation and the circumstances. Because the great writer is pretty much the boss for any and all agencies, wherever the great writer has an association. Because the great writer is someone that knows a lot about everything, not just some things, but lots of things about the industry. Things related to the history of the industry's really beginnings and the reasons why certain things happen in the order they do. Because someone in every generation has to know more than everyone in their generation, so as to be able to pass on the legacy of work and knowledge about the previous order and system of things. Things that if the lessons were ever learned right from the new generations, the workers in the different tiers of the industry would have learned to adapt and accept and embrace it into its current order, and thus resulting in a better Hollywood industry on every level. Writers, actors, producers, directors, and agents. There would be symmetry, perfect working balance for everyone, and a system and order that would make sense. But without this, you have chaos and disorder. And the movies and the writing industry work just like that. Henceforth, what we have today, whether you're in New York, Australia, China, or LA, meaning you have movies that are hits and misses being released every day, and actors' careers that go down the drains that should be superstars, and writers that die never working in industry whose work is needed for the readers and viewers around them, which may only be discovered by their immediate family and friends after they're dead, because that writer worked for 25 to 30 years as a transit operator raising kids rather than sending their work out to see if anyone would read it because the writer understood the rules aren't fair. So why should I even bother? So they don't, and they remain undiscovered. And that lousy agents keep promoting lousy movie projects for writers who write well enough to keep themselves writing in paid positions, which bring down a movie star's standards and skill, ultimately ruining their potential because that mediocre agent keeps telling their employers what to do, trying to tell them that they are the employer, resulting in a stupid formal relationship that renders stupid results. I can go on, but you understand that being one of the greatest producers, what it is I am saying. You see, I call you great there, Richard. See, bow. Accept the compliment. You know when not to watch a movie, and you know why not to watch a movie. Me too. Together we make a great team, and the movies that we could produce, the results we get in scripts would be awesome. I know this. I have no doubt. When I sent that letter last year, I was trying to appeal to a few different things, simple things. One of them was your sense of humor. My intent is not to be to offend your secretary for being so brazen and light-hearted in personality that I thought what I was saying this way would be received by you as relatively funny. That you would immediately read my letter and hold the CDR in your hand and laugh at the joke of this movie arriving on a piece of plastic that saves a lot of tree and paper, and ultimately me money for not needing to print it and bind it in the old-fashioned paper method. Because it's You've Got Mail too. The joke of you reading the words that you've got mail, but not on paper. And so then you put the CDR into the computer and begin to read the movie in the Word document on the screen in front of you. And 3 minutes into reading, you suddenly realize this is a problem. And then you are suddenly frustrated about something very immediate, that you can't take the manuscript and go sit outside away from your desk and take in an afternoon looking over LA, reading something that you do, that you could possibly take your glasses off at the end of and sigh with a smile over understanding why it is you do what you do and what waiting for the right project to come along is for. So you can utter under your breath that this is the best screenplay you have read in over 16 years. Making that day on your calendar and that event a very important one for you and your company's immediate future. Because as a great writer, I already know how great I am. And great writers know how to reach the producer for themselves because they know the industry better than the mediocre agency. And that was the other key thing I was trying to establish in your brain. That you understand, if as the writer I can reach you directly, what the hell do I need an agent for? Unless you teach your mediocre secretary the difference of her mediocre job, and that telling a great writer to get a mediocre agent was the worst advice that a secretary to a great boss and production company could ever give. And that her mediocre job is replaceable, and thus only the expense of that event would she finally understand the difference between her and the great writer's job. Great writers are more important than agents and secretaries. And great producers know that and know the difference when they are given the chance and opportunity to be made aware of this writer and that writer's work. A great secretary knows how to think for her boss. The great producer, she is his eyes, ears, and heart, essentially his best friend at the office. It is a great secretary's job to know when it's time to bend or just outright break rules that are in place for the ordinary average person to keep in order for the industry where millions of people are dying to succeed every day stays in order. But only the best of what it takes to be the best. And if a secretary can't read the title of something and realize how potentially big the title suggests this project is insinuating it is, then it is all probably quite true in sentiment that the secretary isn't the right secretary for the right great producer. And likely it's someone like that great writer who replaces the great producer secretary because of the loss of that great movie success every minute of the day that its book doesn't hit bookstore shelves or the pilot isn't getting underway. Because the great producer secretary didn't have a good enough sense of humor to read something and know when to laugh. Because the words itself depicting the name of the next proposed project in itself is funny. You've got mail too. You don't write back threatening someone to proceed with caution about copyright issues as a secretary to the great producer that the writer was sending to the work to. I was sending it in good heart, good faith. That if I was obviously the right great writer to write this second part to something, that the great producer should have the chance to decide whether he wants to produce it or that he doesn't want to make a second part to this and that somebody else can put in bids. But you don't write back to that writer telling them, oh, be careful of copyright. If I was worried about that, would I have sent it? That isn't the frame of mind that I was thinking in or the level I was at all when I put it in the mail. But I have faith and trust in knowing that what I have written is protected because I have so many copies of it and that nobody can be my mind. And in fact, I had the opposite. I was thinking about it being embraced, accepted, and liked, enjoyed, laughed at, and read. The CDR was already copyrighted. You could only read it. You couldn't change it. You couldn't do anything to it. So there was no issues there. So I was just really devastated when I had that as an answer back because that is not the persona or the energy of what I've come to know of Richard Donner or his work. That he doesn't have a secretary that's more miserable than him, being his eyes, ears, and hearts, or meaner than him. That nulls and voids the whole company and the concept of the compliment and the things about what it's worked so hard to build. Just shooting yourself in the foot. It's like having, garlic or a steak with onion hanging from it and people walk in and go, whoo, what's that? And leave. Because the great producer secretary didn't have a good enough sense of humor to read something and know when to laugh. Keyword laugh. Because the word itself depicting the name of the next proposed project in itself is funny. You've got mail too. That in itself should have made it to his desk. She should have knocked on his door. I think you should read this. I think you should decide what to do. And he'd say, what is it? She'd say, you've got mail too. And he said, give me that. You don't write back threatening someone to proceed with caution about copyright issues. As a secretary to the great producer that the writer was sending the work to, if there was a threat or issue of copyright infringements of any kind, would the great writer have thought to send the great work to the great producer? The great writer was doing the opposite. She was inviting the great producer to be a part of a great career and possibly just become great friends. I'm inviting you to get to know me. I'm inviting you to be a part of my life. I'm inviting you to have adventure with me. I'm inviting you to laugh and joke and drink coffee and travel. And talk about tons of different possible projects that the great writer and the great producer can work on together because the two work so well together. They're similar in thought and style, but it's like being vegetables in a good stew they are making together. Now, I don't know how you feel about your staff, Richard. Like you, I am very easygoing, a relatively happy-go-lucky person, and as financially frustrated as I am, and disappointed with the outcome of my initial effort in contacting you last year, I know that you may have attachment to your staff, and not want to do much about the long process that you're not getting my mail last year is costing us. So I'm fine if you choose to keep your staff the way it is, out of loyalty. We could spend our years of friendship to unfold, cracking jokes about the difference of the results that have rendered themselves as the outcome that finally brought us together in the place where we could spend the rest of our careers talking about our lives and the work behind and ahead of us. I went to two different banks, TD Canada Trust and Royal Bank of Canada. And while the system has not changed much in the last 50 years, the bottom floor of the bank is still the bottom floor. What has changed is that 50 years ago, the banks were not as tall. And so someone on the bottom floor usually had a phone number to people working in the middle and the top floors of the bank. Now, in one bank, I noticed the bottom floor people were not even attached to the tower. Meaning the tower people were saying, we don't have anything to do with those people at all. We are embarrassed they work at the same bank as us. The other bank at least had a nice office array and a private place for a person to display their work out on the table for the person who should have been the one to have phone numbers to office floors on floors higher than theirs. Understanding that if she did, that would be how she'd find herself getting promoted. Therein lies my intellectual frustrations with everyone around me. Because when a completed manuscript with the magnitude and power such as the one I have written comes along, and someone in the bank on the bottom floor can't read it and understand to get excited, really, really excited, but their hands start shaking because it feels like the minute in life when you've all just won a lottery, your dreams are suddenly all going to come true based on what you do in the next 5 minutes. Meaning that in order for anyone on the bottom floor to ever get jobs that move them up in the bank, they have to know when it's time to use the numbers in their little black book. I literally went to those banks that day, Richard, to test the waters. I wanted to see if someone in either bank understood that reading the title, You've Got Mail Too, on the completed manuscript meant that the writer of this movie doesn't own half the bank, but has bought the bank. And that phoning that important number to the person you know works on the top floor in the bank is who you are supposed to call in a moment, like the one I gave both those women. There was indeed a guy in the background who worked in the first bank who completely understood what I was doing and was in such a state of shock as he witnessed history in the making because he could hear what I was saying and understood what it meant. He was nervous. An expression was all over his face. It was like being in the movie Ghost, only it is very much real life. Because what was portrayed in that movie is very much what it's like working at banks and around dealing with money and banks. Now, my presentation for both these banks was perfect. I went beyond expectations, spent more money than necessary to impress either of the ladies on the bottom floor because I was wanting to practice. And to brag just a little bit to the ladies that will either remain on the bottom floor of the banks or get fired by the people on the top floor of the banks after they hear about my one-time effort to go get the money necessary to start the next process in my company's requirements so that I can exist and continue forward in my plans for making this finished movie of mine, but definitely not my last finished movie. When you and I both understand that I didn't need that full presentation, telling them there is much more to come with my company and how many people that employs and the products that go with the work that is to be unveiled. All I needed was the completed manuscript, neatly typed in double space and properly binded. Because the profit of the sales of the products related to this movie and the earnings in the theater is enough to own any one bank I walk into with it. This is the power about the writer and how important, good, and good that writer's work is, and the instant results that kind of work should always, now and forever render the minute it's complete. And the first person in an important place of business relating to its success happens to read just the title. I have tried desperately to get reader recommends out of actors because this is all I knew I really needed for you to read it, to complement the standard and style of your company's work ethics, and I was fine with that. But the mentality, not understanding the gravity and importance of that title, and the massive financial insanity and world-renowned freedom that is sitting in front of them, leaves one such as yourself to not have to question or wonder why people like myself use heroin and cocaine now and again in this life, because of being allergic to all the average, mediocre, everyday, stupid people that surround the great mind of a great writer living in a stupid time, living through a stupid system. That my only thoughts on the matter was to teach people the difference of what the hell I am talking about, so they can understand the difference between me and you, and those of our status and caliber in this workforce, not just the industry we are professionals in. We run the world. We control everything. We decide whether people have jobs and where those jobs are going to be and how many of them are going to be because of what we do for a living and what that offers the world. Neither one of the women I spoke with that day understood that. One of them only knew and understood enough about how to mention gap funding and having someone angel gift a project. I took her printed material and had to giggle because I knew her documentation would help me tell the staff on the bottom floor of my production company and bank, because that's what I am after I get up and running, how to get a promotion faster and move up to a different floor. This package she gave me, I knew for my staff, would be a way for them to recognize when someone comes in with material that qualifies them in this category, for there to be immediately taken up to the middle of the building, so long as the projects are within the budget and criteria of future productions and its work. In short, I left both banks, as broke as I've been into them, and warned them that if my producer for this movie and some of my other work and possible partner based out of LA has to come to Toronto for themselves to bring their portfolio and registration of company information to these two banks with me to get the gold price of the funding required to get my company up and running in Canada, so I can start with the first and most immediate project at hand, that it won't be funny, that he's going to be mad, that you would be mad, because most of which they'll be shot in Canada, etc. So in short, I'm saying that you, my dearest Richard, must come to Toronto now and help me. Make Canadian banks understand who owns them. Great producers like you and great writers like me. My goal had been to have $300 million to start with for a budget for You've Got Mail 2. Now that money is probably enough to make You've Got Mail 2 and Supergirl 2. But based on the value of the first movie from 16 years ago, I just wanted to see if I could get the amount of money with the change of inflation, with the startup capital would be equal today to X-Men, for instance, like they were 200 million in Quebec. Whether or not I needed that much. And then my plan had been to come to meet you and see if you could match that so we could have 600 million to work with on about 3 or 4 projects of mine together, as well as the writing projects, such as starting to develop the novella or graphic novels for Superwoman comic book series. I told them that my producer would be mad. Well, you don't get really mad, real mad, but you do have, perfections. And that's fine. Perfection's great. I've seen them. I like your perfections. Your qualities are great. So you get mad at them going, I shouldn't be here showing you this to tell you to give her that money. But if we had gone to 2 Canadian banks, we could have left Canada with 600 million. Wouldn't have had to go to an LA bank. But on the other hand, 300 million here and 200 million there means we don't have to worry about messing with the money. Anything that's paid for from Canada, we use the Canada bank funds. Anything in the U.S. stays in U.S. dollars. So there's no messing with interest and changes, and you don't have to worry about losing money or not giving enough out. in transfer, right? Now, if everything had gone according to plan, then you would have received all my recent mail and been having a great time reading through all of that, while the whole time being pissed about the fact that you still haven't sat down and got to read, printed off, properly typed and binded copy of the manuscript you've got mailed too. So you can sip on your favorite summer drink and read till it's done, and you can close the book, look up feeling great, staring out over the beautiful sunset, because for having finished reading it, the whole thing, before the day was too late. Feeling great for having just read something that, if only for you, was the best thing you've ever read in 16 years. You are only waiting for the one thing, and that's to read the next one, which would be the point of closing the book till you've got mail too. When's the next one finished? Which is why I needed you to come to Toronto, because if you've got mail 3. You see, it costs me $40 every time I print off a copy of the binded manuscript. And then there is the postal fees, and then there's the waiting time. In short, I thought if I could get enough money to come to you in style with this one copy of the movie I've printed off in my care, that we could then get somewhere. However, that didn't happen, and well, since I can't send it to you on CDR and have you printed off every page from your printer at your expense, because we both know the funniest part of the whole story of this series is that we are sick of computers and technology, and therefore receiving CDR to print and read the movie from wouldn't fit the mood or standard for the structure we are used to in this industry. Now, if you wanted me to send it via email as an attachment and try to send you a CDR again so you can process the funniest part of what my sense of humor was trying to appeal to your sense of humor in my first effort in sending the CDR last year, then you are more than welcome to ask me to send it in either of these above formats. But as for the printed hard copy, well, the only way I want you to have that opportunity to read this and in that format is if you and me have finally met in person. Maybe you spent the afternoon sitting outside at a cabana reading it, while I am sitting working on Supergirl 2, or You've Got Mail 3, not disturbing divorcing how much you and I are enjoying good company while reading this movie and working on something else without disturbing each other. That was the idea. Because when it comes time to deal with You've Got Mail 3, it's going to be back to the daily grind, coming to terms with the mess that has occurred because you didn't get the first letter and first attempt at contact with the CDR on time. This has left what was already urgent then in an even bigger mess because the deadline I needed, the deadline as the great writer I was trying to reach, was missed. I cannot now reestablish those things that were active and in place and part of the current system. Now they are part of a recent history change, which changes my work for the storyboard on the 3rd installment, and I thought you should have a few minutes of pleasure to enjoy the second movie before you have to deal with the stress and problems and nausea of hearing about what has gone amiss in the regards to the 3rd one, and why it isn't finished this year. So you could have 2 finished movies back to back to produce, making history for this movie series. I'm not sure what you are going to want to do. I'm not sure what we are going to do. But I know I had needed someone to talk to about it last year, because I know how good of a writer I tend to stay. But the little things matter in the quality of my work, and I'm not willing to bend those to the point where we might have to discuss scrapping a 3rd one altogether. And the closer to real I can get something, the more magnitude it will provide the worldwide audience, giving us perfect results and lots of yours. But now that I didn't get my way, I can only let you read what I have and tell you the details in person while showing you around here in Toronto, where you should be now, where we should have come weeks ago, and let you think about things. Tom and Meg and the other names I needed to get the results I was looking for are going to have to present me another solution, and I need to see them express what they think the characters' emotions would be about the established events that have happened instead of what were supposed to happen in the story I was trying to work on, and why it's not finished. So I can't be the best. I can't give the best possible story because people don't read. How can you work in the book industry? How can you work in the Hollywood movie industry? How can you work on Broadway? You get these stuff in the mail, but you don't look at stuff long enough and read enough of what's on it to know whether it's important or whether it's urgent or what to do. If the lead performers are involved emotionally, then the outcome of my writing will be the right results for everyone and the hope for this project and the possible series on the table. I mean, if you say forget it, we will just stick with the second one because of the disappointment of what went wrong for me to finish the third one on time. My intent had to give you 2 movies finished, but I needed to have been able to reach somebody to discuss what to do last year. I went to a media press room in a hotel. I went to the publishing company that had to do with what I'll mention about in a minute. Here, the letter didn't even get read. Again, like this, just the letter. I didn't say read the movie. I didn't ask you to publish it. I'm trying to save very important parts of my story by keeping certain things in place that have been around for 80 years. I've had some time to think about it. But in short, this is all something we can discuss in person together. Now, I love the idea of you coming across pissed to the bank girls that I had given them the impression of you. If I had to actually get you to come to Toronto and look at them stupid, for understanding why I shouldn't have to do this order of things to get the money necessary for us to move forward with our work's plans. I will leave it to you on how you conduct yourself regarding the main floor bank employees to the top floor offices in the buildings, and relish the opportunity to record your natural reaction and facial expressions at those moments in time, divorcing my single effort to save you the headache of having to come here and do what I said would happen if they didn't think big enough while I was sitting across from them in those buildings at that time. I will end here. This is a long enough letter, noting how much there is to discuss and read, as it were. I look forward to hearing from you soon and what you want to do from here, to which the outcome is one I dare say I am more than looking forward to finally seeing take place. I might like to visit Japan one day, but for the moment, I would like to sleep on a real bed again, not a mattress on a floor in a little room in a hole in the ground in a house in Toronto, and not have to worry about my credit card bill being paid off or where my grocery money is coming from anymore. I am in short very tired. I need a vacation in a different country and to recoup from a surgery I need that I haven't had yet, but I hope to do very soon. Recovery from this procedure in a safe, warm place would be ideal. Please go ahead and contact me in any one of the formats below. I look forward to hearing from you and to finally move ahead with the future and all the success that brings the two of us and all who work with us. Please do not frame this letter and hang it on the office wall for people to come to the building over the next 100 years to read it, to establish the communication that depicts and explains everything in the simple sentiment of good, better, best. In 8 pages showing what it's like to read and understand one of the greatest minds of the century, never mind one of the greatest writers in her lifetime. This would be embarrassing to me, having a part of the present left for the future to read over and over again, understanding that in my life and all its work that I did absolutely nothing to change the system they are in and how it works for them, but just left a piece of evidence pointing out the difference of me and all of them and all the centuries they can never render the same differences um, um, of what they're doing on their terms because of being unable to apply what they are not comprehending in what they've read. Because if people could do that, I would never have to write you this letter. And I cannot tell you how tired I have become of writing letters. I have been sending stuff out in the mail nonstop for the last 6 years. So there's no surprise why I wound up writing You've Got Mail 2 and 3. Now the challenge is about how we're going to get you to read it. I will leave that entirely up to the fate or delivery of this letter. Sincerely, the writer, Jennifer S. Cooley, President and CEO of Future Productions, aka Superwoman. P.S. If things can be arranged that I can get to Gene Hackman's place to spend some time working on Supergirl 2, we could probably have that script completed in a matter of weeks. I also need you to get a hold of Tom Welling if my recent efforts of reaching him through Warner Brothers doesn't result in contact with him, because my work plays a big, significant part in his career as well. And I'm not referring to Smallville or Superman. And I am not referring to Smallville. I am referring to the new Rhett Butler and Rhett Butler's people. I'm possibly hosting my fantasy island idea. I don't even think you got the picture for that. But obviously we know the result of that was that it got sent back without being opened long enough for her to see that it's a letter and it says, "My dearest Richard." Right there, that would be enough for me to go to the boss. I think you should read this. Is it "My dearest Richard" isn't something I should be reading? I'm just your secretary. Because the secretary's sense of humor, the joke, the idea would be that I don't want to know if you're having an affair. I just work for you. I'm not a counselor. Born of the emergency of last year's effort to reach you, Richard Donner, if you do manage to ever get to watch this video, which I'm thinking you probably will. Here in Toronto is the world's biggest bookstore. Was the world's biggest bookstore. It was still open and running, and it was earning money fine. But the money people, the businessmen, they wanted to make condos on that land. They want to renovate and make a tall building and maximize the space, putting in some tall new structure, rather than seeing the value of this historic building that when it was opened 80 years ago really was by square foot the world's biggest bookstore. And that this whole time in all of America, they only had to come to Toronto to visit the world's biggest bookstore, to go shopping in the world's biggest bookstore. And my story in the third one was about Joe Fox and Kathleen Kelly dealing with that store being bigger than Fox Books in New York, and that it's running successfully, and that something happens during the process of its successful running, and then something needs to be done, and then she says, "Don't be so callous, Joe. You gotta help the world's biggest bookstore doing whatever it is they need to do to solve their problem, even if it meant moving them to a different square footage of spot." And he owns the rights to the rent of the store, and the store keeps running, or something. I don't know. But you know what his character was like. And I wanted to get the actors here to get the feel of the situation, for knowing that we only had so many weeks to figure out what to do, to shoot live shots of the store still running, with stuff still in it, with the history of the building and everything about it there in place. And when that got closed, because I couldn't reach you right away, and I couldn't reach the presidents, and the people were thinking about turning it into condo, which could take them years to even just start the first dig in. Right now, the building is now closed, and it's sitting empty, and the sign's got cracks in it, and it's still there. And I went to the Canadian book company that owns the spot, that bought the world's biggest bookstore, that I didn't know owned it, to get him to read a letter I sent to him, which I've kept all these letters to. So I gave him the letter along with the script so they could see the importance and the efforts I've made. It got sent back, didn't even read the letter. The same thing your secretary did about the copyright of my work. I don't care about the movie. I care about the third movie. I care about what I'm trying to save, so I can continue to write the best of my standards and ability, my quality. So it's put a bad taste in my mouth and left me not wanting to finish the third one at all. And in the process of that happening, I discovered this theater, this beautiful old brick theater, that was also owned by this same book company here in Canada, which is not part of the fiction work in the movie, because I don't want to have to pay them to use their name for the rights. The point of the movie is to use just Fox Books. So this theater had a puppet show place thing upstairs, second floor, and an old projector too, that would play down onto the stage where the curtain and the brick wall was still there. And so whatever movie's playing on the projector goes and shows. You could do in the evening, you could do live theater in the evening, curtains, and in the daytime the curtains close. And there's a puppet show upstairs for the kids. And it's a bookstore during the day. You have the MP3 tables and regular books and all this stuff. It was beautiful. And they want to turn it into a drugstore, a Shoppers Drug Mart. I was working there in security a couple of shifts in that site, and my heart was broken. I was so distraught, and I knew that if Meg Ryan got there, and if Meg Ryan saw the building, she'd freak out and say, "Well, what do we do? Well, we got to do whatever we got to do to save this building, to make sure it stays a theater. It's 100 years old. It's Roncesvalles Theater. It has to do with the history of the early days of the city of Toronto, and how high up Toronto used to be considered Toronto before they tried to amalgamate all these suburbia neighborhoods and incorporating it into a city to try to make it compete with New York. And then I realized that in the third one that theater could also have been put in as some way for Joe Fox to make amends and make appeal and make his new whatever to be happy by giving her something to do more than what I had intended in the second and the beginning of what I wrote in the third. But again, without getting people here to see these things, to put stuff into place to implement saving the second building as well, then it changes the script again. So it's put me off, and I can't make the decision. Won't write anymore. What's the point? I'm a great writer, and I don't want to settle for anything less. So unless I get the feel and opinion and the backing of other people, I even tried to reach out to James Franco's acting theater place in LA because I wanted to hold a fundraiser. The idea if I had his help because he was always in New York, so close to here, to go raise funds to keep the theater running, to keep the building owned, to keep it in proper order and renovate it as it is and use that in the third one, it would be great. Now, with both these buildings being converted into other things, and there's only time limit available to record these buildings in their natural state, so that we can even draw plans or make sets around it. Without that done, then we have nothing to work with in footage. So it makes writing a third one a mute point, null and void. So henceforth, I'm turning to the camera and I'm turning to these videos, and I'm turning to the help of the people I have just sent stuff to, which is Authentic Literary Talent Agency in New York and John Schneider Studios, because he's got no investment, like I said, no attachment to Richard Donner Productions. There's nothing. We have never met in person, so he can look at everything through a biased third-person opinion and honestly say everything that he's reviewed is like, this is just a letter, and it's not breaking any rules, and it's a good letter, and it's a nice letter. It dawns on him, maybe he's like, well, shoot, since I'm closer, how about I do this? And he gets up and takes the letter and goes over to the Donner Company, and he says to the secretary, hi, and the secretary says, wow, you're John Schneider. Yes, I am. Can I speak to Richard Donner, please? Which is, okay, just a minute. She calls him up on the phone. John Schneider's in the waiting room to see her. Richard's like, okay, send him in. So he goes in, he sits down and says, here. And lets him read it. And Richard reads it, reads the date on it, shakes his head. And then he tells him the story about the videos and says, I think you should watch these. I'm thinking, this is what I know about him. Without him seeing these videos yet, and if he does see it and laugh at the fact that his strange thought is thinking, because he knows how he got his beginnings. Because he knows he had to lie about his age. Bluffed his way into a part that's changed his world forever. That he's still fighting to be independent. He wants to make his own movies and the things he's written. He's not paying some other middleman to put their stamp on it to say, oh yes, it's good, make it, and it turns out to be crap. But it pays bills. This isn't about paying bills. It's about what you love to do and about whether you're good at it. And the point of this envelope and why I showed it all in videos this way was that to see his sense of humor be like-minded with mine after looking through everything and thinking about what is he going to do from his perspective. Because there's no investment or loss for him to do something good in that way. And realize that he liked my train of thought. And then it just occurs to him that he could do something to make that difference. Then there's John at Authentic, who owns the company, Rubenstein, who hasn't met me either, who could read through the same thing and see the same thing after witnessing everything and realize, okay, we will give her a stamped letter and paragraph of instruction, and we will represent her this one time. Just to give Richard Donner, I guess, that final satisfaction for his secretary to get something from me right. But at that point, he could have already been given this letter from John Schneider Studios. I don't know. And read it and then go out to his secretary and say, look at the date on this. Read it. It's just a letter. There's no rules in the Hollywood industry, whether you're in New York, Australia, or Hollywood, that says you can't even receive letters or make friends. This is when you're going too far. This is where you're blacklisting whether you realize it or not. This is where you're ruining things. And you're making it not so fun for people to want to be in the industry and have a good time, make friends, and build memories. So now I'm feeling this letter's going to get framed no matter what. just because of what it's going through to get to the person it's addressed to, and how many people are going to hear it, read it before he gets it. I might just put it framed in the hall of my production company when I finally get it running. And if I had the likes of Steven Seagal, for instance, because he did the same thing I tried to do by going to the bank, only he had 25 years of policing under his belt, so he had good credit. I have martial arts experience. I want to write some movies. Okay, how much money? Here you go. And he left and got to do what he wanted to do. He's never looked back. If I had that with me in the bank, just standing there in the corner, and they're like, that's Steven Seagal. And I'm, yes, it is. And he's not speaking. And the answer. And they're kind of away the check, then it would have been solved. But his secretary is literally waiting for me to register and license my own company so I can send her a letterhead in a formal format that says, hi, I'm representing myself. Here's the submission that is now formal, and it's my stamped company name and signature on it to go with the script that I have written. Not having to pay any middleman. Then she's going to get it and go, oh. So I just wasted a lot of my boss's time. Yeah, time is money. So anyways, I'm going to keep lighthearted. I have a good sense of humor, but there's the letter. It's read. It's out there. I'm going to try to figure out how to post this video off this small thing. And I'm going to keep focused on trying to get Tom Welling in the closing of this third segment to come and finally meet with me in person so we can discuss all the custody and the legal paperwork involved with Sarah's life and her future connection with Panache Agency, commercials, and photo shoots and other stuff, so she can have agents representing her till mommy's up and running. And he can spend time with her. And then we can talk about the social workers and the lawsuits involved, the different provinces in Canada that have kept us from meeting and kept his work held back and kept his personal life from going forward to where it should have been between him, me, and children, and the concept of conversations of the world finding out that I am a lady and he is a lord and all this stuff that he's, I know, inside dying to choke me over, going, oh, it's important, you matter, why do you have to be this way? The world needs to know, or they have to know, or there's certain things that have to happen a certain way, kind of fun. And ultimately, because I don't want to be dunked with a cold bucket of water in the snow. I don't want to do this polar bear ALS video. I don't want to be getting wet when it's cold. No, I don't want to be getting wet when it's cold. Only getting cold when it's hot and cooling you down. So I'm really hoping that throughout all of this effort with the Richard Donner thing and my movie and where I sent it all to, that we will finally touch base and make up for everything really quickly, including what to do with the fob I sent to Sirius Radio. That is all for you with material that's on it, and you going, hey, where's my fob? After you had been on radio and been so gracious to do an interview, only for them to get that and not contact you to say, hey, we have something here that we looked at, and you can see by evidence that was on it that it's for you. It's not been good. It's been a long, hard 4.5 years. I'm tired, and I want to come home. Wherever we build that home, that life, I want to see that ribbon get cut and have that future production sign, watching my dreams come true. And that starts with finally getting to meet with you and finally getting this movie read and finally dealing with the custody of Sarah. So, yeah. Get a phone, look at the videos, get in touch with John, or John get in touch with Tom. And just support future productions. Help me, help you, like I said, and let's see where the adventures of all this can go. I'd like to see the finished little movie of all the clips of the things I've done through the years. It'll be really funny. If you guys sit through the whole 55 minutes, congratulations, thank you. If not, pause and just save where you are and watch some more. This is probably the longest one I've ever recorded to date. But I'm getting tired of being around computers and in front of cameras. Now it's time to be behind one. I want to get handheld. In all my life of writing and being in the arts and being passionate about what I do, I have never held a camera. And telephones don't count. Phones with cameras in them. I'm talking camcorder, big old shoulder cameras. If I'm going to be a nutcase, so when I finally go out and purchase my handheld, that thing's going to go with me everywhere. I'm going to have so much fun. And they save all that material and sit down and have somebody have the job of being paid to go through the stuff and see what can be used down the road. But that's my story. I'm sticking with it. Um, if people don't get here soon, more tattoos will be coming. But I already hear the conversation from his head now going, what the heck is this? What did you do? Pain. Person can only go so long, so far, having things happen to them. They can endure so much before the pain gets to the point where you have to do something, an outlet. And this has become my new outlet. And if I'm going to do this whole Cinderella effect or this Aurora or something experience with you in my life, then you're going to have to get here soon. It's going to have to happen quickly, or I'm going to be covered. And then you'd look weird with you out in public with me with like 11 tattoos and braces. I got to get my teeth fixed. It's going to cost money. My oldest daughter needs her teeth fixed too. I still can't wait to do that whole segment thing where I say to you, Jonathan, can I have my teeth fixed now? And you said, why, sure, honey. You sit down here in this chair and you see what the doctor can do for you. I can still remember that segment. No, the numbing factor, moonshine bombs. Catching the culprit. Yeah. So that moment awaits. So I'm going to sign off, confirm to load this, and I'll see you guys around soon. Thanks for watching. Thanks for the support. Keep coming back. Peace out. NowTV Canada. Your host, Jennifer, a.k.a. Super One.